A long time ago, in the province of Surasena, there lived a king, Chitraketu. His name was Chitraketu. He ruled the whole earth. During his reign, the earth produced all the necessities of life. Chitraketu had 12 million wives, but all the wives were barren. He didn't have any children. King Chitraketu was very handsome. He was born in a high family and he had complete education. He was wealthy and opulent with many queens and he had a vast kingdom. Do you know the meaning of opulent? Rich. Okay. So, in spite of all this, he was not happy. He was anxious because he had no children. One day, the great sage Angira arrived at the palace of Chitraketu. Chitraketu immediately stood up from his throne, worshipped him according to the Vedic conduct. King Chitraketu said, "O great soul, I have no son. That is why my kingdom, my opulence, my possessions do not please me. Kindly do something so that I may have a son to deliver me and my ancestors from hellish conditions." In Vedic civilization, the son's duty is to deliver the parents and forefathers from the cycle of death and birth by giving them Krishna consciousness. The sage Angira was very merciful. In response to the king's words, he performed a sacrifice by offering oblations of sweet rice to the Twesta. What is meant by oblation? The thing that is given as sacrifice to God, that we call it as oblations. The remnants of those oblations were given to Kridadyudi. Do you know who is Kridadyudi? She is the first of the millions of wives. She is so perfect in everything. "Oh great king, you will be having a son who is the cause of your great happiness and sorrow." And he went away. After eating the remnants of the food from the sacrifice, the queen bore a child. By hearing this word, all the inhabitants of Surasena were extremely happy and pleased. What is the meaning of inhabitants? People who reside in that place, we call it as inhabitants. Chitraketu's joy knew no bounds. He then performed the naming ceremony ritual by arranging so many learned brahmanas and offering the benedictions to the child. What is the meaning of benediction? It's just a blessing. He very generously gave charity of gold, silver, villages, horses, elephants, garments, everything to others. He gave 60 crores of cows in charity. When a poor man gets so much of money after great difficulty, his attachment to the money increases. Similarly, Chitraketu and the queen's attachment towards their son, it was increasing day by day. King Chitraketu brought up his son very carefully and was so affectionate to his wife Kridadyudi. Gradually, he neglected his other wives as they did not have any children. The other queens were extremely unhappy and they condemned themselves. Being thus neglected by their husband, as well as by seeing Kridadyudi's good fortune of possessing a child, the other queens were in envy. What is envy? Feeling of discontent. That is called envy. As envy increases, they lost their intelligence. The queens became extremely hard-hearted and poisoned the child. Unaware of this, Kridadyudi ordered the nurse to wake up the child as she felt that the child was sleeping for a long time. The nurse went and woke up the child and she saw that the baby's eyes had turned upwards. There were no signs of life. She immediately fell down and started to cry loudly. Hearing her cries, the queens came immediately. Seeing her son dead, she fainted and her hair and dress in disarray. Disarray means a state of untidiness. Hearing the loud crying, all the inhabitants of that place reached there and they all started to cry loud. The other queens who poisoned the child also pretended to cry. When King Chitraketu heard that his son was dead by unknown cause, he became mad like anything due to grief. Slipping and falling, the king fell on the child and became unconscious. When the king regained his consciousness, he started to cry. Tears rolled down from his eyes. He couldn't speak and he cried uncontrollably. Kritatyuti, seeing her husband's grief, lamented in various ways. Do you know what is the meaning of lamented? Lamented means a conventional way of describing someone who is dead. So she started to lament in different ways describing her child. Everyone who was watching this, their heart was filled with pain and started to cry. When the sage Angira understood that the king was in grief and he is in debt, he went there with Narada Muni. Both of them instructed to the king as follows: "O king, why are you crying by seeing the dead body? This material body and all the relationships are temporary only. The soul enters and exits the body under the influence of the past activities and the influence of time. This is totally controlled by Lord Vishnu. Just surrender to him," they said to the king. Thus, by the mystic power, Narada Muni brought the soul of the child to the vision of everyone. Immediately, the room became so bright that the people hardly can see the child. As the dead body began to move, Narada Muni said, "Oh dear soul, you see your parents, your friends, relatives are overwhelmed with grief and sorrow. Because you have died untimely, the balance of your life still remains. Your soul can re-enter into the body," Narada Muni said. "You can enjoy the remainder of your life surrounded by friends and relationships. You can accept the royal throne and the opulence for the rest of your life." By Narada Muni's mystic power, the soul has re-entered into the body for a short time. The soul said to everyone, "According to the results of my material activities, I, the soul, occupy one body after another. Sometimes I occupy the body of a demigod, sometimes that of the lower animals or vegetables, and sometimes I get a human body. In which birth were these two my father and mother? No one is actually my father and mother. How can I accept these two people as my parents? The Vedas teach that the soul enters the body made of material elements, that is, earth, water, fire, air, ether. Here a soul had entered into the body produced by King Chitraketu and his wife. Actually, he was not their son. The soul is the eternal son of the Supreme God, Lord Krishna. But because he wants to enjoy this material world, Krishna gives him a chance to enter various bodies and try to enjoy separately from Krishna. The soul is eternal and imperishable because he actually has no beginning and no end. He never takes birth or dies. One who understands this is never overcome by grief. The soul, in the form of King Chitraketu's son, spoke in this way and left. Thus, they cut off their bonds of affection, which was due to their relationship with him, and stopped mourning. Thus enlightened by the instructions of Narada Muni and sage Angira, the king became fully aware of spiritual knowledge. He started chanting the holy names of Krishna as instructed by Narada Muni. He quickly attained the lotus feet of Lord Krishna in the form of Anantadeva. Chitraketu saw that the Lord was as white as the white fibers of the lotus flower. He was dressed in bluish garments and he was adorned with a glittering helmet, armlets, belt, and bangles. His face was smiling and his eyes were reddish. He was surrounded by great devotees like Sanat Kumaras. As soon as he saw Lord Krishna, he was cleansed of all the impurities. In this way, he received the mercy of Lord and perfected his life. I think everyone understood the story, the moral of the story, gist of the story. So everyone of us gets detached from the worldly pleasures as they are all temporary. Let us pray to God and let us all get cleansed by reaching His lotus feet. I'll catch you with interesting videos like this. Until then, it's bye from Uma Selvakumar. Thank you. Have a nice day.